Former WWE superstars currently with Impact Wrestling turned down an opportunity to be in the 2022 Royal Rumble match. Paige calls out a WWE authority figure. Shotzy Blackheart apologizes, and WWE reportedly is going to change the Money in the Bank pay-per-view dates. All this and more in today's WWE news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's get straight into the biggest story of the day. This is kind of crossing over into Impact Wrestling news. It's WWE news, but there's so much to talk about in Impact Wrestling that I'm going to talk about later on today, so I thought I'd put it in the WWE news video, and that is former WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Two former WWE Women's Tag Team Champions have turned down a chance to be in the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble match, those being current Impact Wrestling Knockouts Tag Team Champions, The Inspiration, Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay, were reportedly offered spots in the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble match, but turned down the offer, according to a report by Fightful Select. Now, this report cites that an Impact Wrestling source said the company would have approved the deal with WWE, but The Inspiration did not want to go back to WWE at this time. Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay were released from WWE back in April of 2021. Before their WWE release, they won the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships at WrestleMania 35 and held their titles for 120 days. Now, they joined Impact Wrestling in October of last year, making their debut at the Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Now, as previously noted, the current Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion, Mickie James, will be a part of the Women's Royal Rumble match later on this week. Of course, the WWE Royal Rumble will take place on January 29th from the Dome at America Center in St. Louis, Missouri. So this is a really interesting one because obviously we know that WWE are looking for these Forbidden Door entrants into the Royal Rumble match. We know, of course, that Mickie James is going to be a Forbidden Door entrant. She's going to be carrying, or at least she hopes to be carrying, the Knockouts Championship with her as she makes her entrance at the Royal Rumble. WWE, certainly on social media, not so much on television. I think Pat McAfee had mentioned it in passing on SmackDown, but they've referenced that it's the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Champion is going to be at the Rumble. And this goes to show that it's not just going to be limited to Mickie James at the event. We know, of course, that WWE wants to have a Forbidden Door entrant in the men's Royal Rumble match. We also know that it's not going to be, as far as we're aware, of an AEW star being that Forbidden Door entrant in the men's Rumble, because AEW and WWE, they've never been on great terms, but certainly recently with the, self-mutilation, gory, all that kind of stuff, it's essentially been ruled out. So don't expect to see Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, etc. But you never know. Anything's possible. So a lot of people are looking at Impact Wrestling and saying, okay, well, who from Impact Wrestling then could appear in both Royal Rumble matches if we're going to get some of these Forbidden Door entrants? We already know Mickie James. The men's side of thing, we actually did do a video, or I did a video here on the channel talking about what names could appear, and it's slightly difficult, I guess, to pinpoint which one it's going to be, but there's certainly a lot of speculation when it comes to Moose, Matt Cardona, etc. Certainly after Matt Cardona's night last night in GCW, he's red hot right now, so that's a possibility. But when it comes to The Inspiration, the former Iconics, and them turning down the opportunity to be in the Rumble, frankly, I don't blame them. I don't, and I think we have to kind of look at this perspective of it, because I don't think we really have that much. We've kind of just assumed that if WWE, comes knocking at the door and comes calling, that these talents will be happy enough to go back. You have to kind of look at the Mickie James situation as well and say a lot of people were surprised, not just because of WWE working with someone that's contracted to another pro wrestling company, but also these people, there's a reason they're no longer with the WWE, and their exit from the company sometimes isn't really civil, and sometimes it's not very, harmonious. And certainly if they've been released by WWE in the last year or so, there's a lot of bitterness and there's a lot of frustration and anger towards WWE in terms of their exit. And especially when you look at Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay, the former Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, there's a lot of I guess, frustration there because, one, again, they won. You can trace this back to WrestleMania 35, 2019. They won the Women's Tag Team Championships, and then they basically did nothing. They did nothing with them. They did nothing on television. They appeared in a couple of backstage segments. I don't know how often they actually defended the Women's Tag Team Championships before they lost them. It might be once or twice. Again, they really did nothing. They continued to really do nothing on television for a while, and then just randomly, they were broke up. Remember that episode of Monday Night Raw in 2020? A loser must split up match. It was the Iconics versus the Riot Squad. And everyone went, what? They split them up. Peyton Royce was on Raw. Billie Kay was on SmackDown. Reportedly at the time, it was a case of Vince McMahon really sees big things in Peyton Royce. She's going to get a big push on Raw. And it never happened. What did they do? They paired her up with someone else. They split her up from her best friend, her tag team partner, and they paired her up with Lacey Evans. And the storyline was she didn't like her tag team partner, which was a reflection of real life because it made zero sense. And Billie Kay, who ironically wasn't the one they wanted to push, actually got over on SmackDown doing her whole CV gimmick and offering out her services, all that kind of stuff, a comedy character. But frankly, I think if they weren't in the Thunderdome at the time, she might even still be with the company right now because she was over. She was super popular on social media because she was entertaining, she was funny. They did a whole sort of spot around her in the Royal Rumble that year of her being on commentary, and every time someone came out, she offered her CV to them and all that kind of stuff. She competed at WrestleMania, and she was over at WrestleMania. They actually won on night one the tag team match. Or did they win the tag team match? No, it was Natalya and someone else. Either way, I forget. But it was baffling. And when they were released, both of them, everyone went, what a waste. And we've heard that time and time again, haven't we? With talents that have been released over the course of the last 12 months or so. So when WWE comes calling to these names, to the Iconics, we bear in mind as well, when they were released by WWE, they couldn't work for like 6 months, something like that. Because they didn't have their visa issues sorted, they didn't have green cards, there was immigration issues, so they couldn't get a paying job for the majority of the year after that. It took until October before they could take a paying job because they technically weren't allowed to. They didn't have a work green card. It was crazy. So forgive me. If I was them, I'd be like, forgive me for when you come knocking at the door. No. And I understand people might say, well, business is business. Don't hold a grudge. You could get, some exposure. You could get Impact Wrestling some exposure. But I think Impact Wrestling, whilst they would have loved the exposure of having their Knockouts champion, Mickie James, coming out with the Knockouts championship, and also the Knockouts tag team champions coming out, I don't necessarily completely blame them. But on the flip side of things, if I was Impact Wrestling, I would probably try and frame it as, ultimately it's your call, but it would be great for the company, it'd be really helping us. But I guess we have to kind of remember, as I mentioned, that some of these people, given their exits from WWE, they might not be completely thrilled or want to go back. They wouldn't want to give WWE the satisfaction. And I guess we have to kind of consider that. Either way, like I said, it would have been a huge moment for Impact, but it's not to be. And fair play to them. And we're not definitely going to see the Iconics. But certainly, I think, as I mentioned, it does give you an idea of what WWE is thinking about when it comes to these Royal Rumble matches. We're not going to get anyone from AEW, but certainly from Impact, it's a possibility. If anything, now I really expect to see maybe Matt Cardona. I think Matt Cardona is a real possibility. And it kind of goes to my theory as well, that if they're going to get people from Impact to be in the Rumble, they want them to have some form of a WWE background. They don't want to be introducing people to the WWE audience that they've never seen before. So I think that potentially does rule out, say, a Moose or someone like that, or a Josh Alexander. But someone like, a Matt Cardona or a W. Morrissey, that's certainly a possibility there. So it's very interesting, and possibly we could see more entrants in the Women's Royal Rumble from Impact Wrestling as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. Let's move on and talk about Paige. Yes, former SmackDown General Manager Paige. We talk about people that could possibly be in the Rumble. Paige is absolutely a possibility. She could very much be in the Rumble. There's been lots of rumors and rumblings, like that pun there, about her possibly coming out of retirement, forced medical retirement to appear in the Rumble. That's a possibility. But Paige and Sonya Deville had a heated Twitter exchange on Sunday. Now, in character, Deville made a snarky remark about the former WWE Divas champion, which promoted Paige to tag Naomi in a response. there was a tweet by Paige that said that she was the best GM, and Sonya Deville then responded by saying, quote, "What is the saying? The student became the master. Thanks for the tips 4 years ago, but I'm your boss now, sweetie." And Paige then said, quote, "I can still make you my bitch anytime. I want Paige 2.0. Naomi will come," then she tagged Naomi rather and said, "Naomi, come get this effing clown shoe." And then Naomi said, "Paige 2.0, not even close, she's the worst. I'm going to shut her up Friday, sis." So, I mean, read into it what you will. As I mentioned, there's been lots of rumours about Paige possibly coming out of retirement. She's hinted at it herself. Obviously, after the Edge return a couple of years ago and seeing all of these people get cleared, it's opened up the possibility of people saying maybe it's a possibility for Paige. I said before, the best thing that Paige has going for her is her age. She is still incredibly young. And we now know a bit more. Science tends to catch up to these things. Medical science tends to catch up to these things. And a bit like with Edge, it just takes time. Sometimes it can take a decade. Sometimes it can take 5 years, 6 years. Look at people like Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was meant to retire as well. And he came out and wrestled for 15 more years, however long it was. So could Paige show up at the weekend? Absolutely she could. And she might not. It might take way, way longer than that. But nevertheless, read into it what you will. Some people might say, oh, she's shooting an angle or she's teasing something. I don't know if I necessarily buy into that, but could we see Paige on Saturday night in the Rumble in a stadium in front of the WWE Universe? It's a real possibility, and I hope so for her sake. She's been through obviously a lot when it comes to the injury, and being forced to retire at such a young age with your whole career ahead of you, it sucks. So fingers crossed, and you never know, maybe it will set up something between her and Sonya Deville. Let's talk about Shotzy Blackheart. There was a really, I guess you could say, bad taste tweet or just controversial tweet that she posted shortly after the passing of legendary musician Meat Loaf last Thursday. Now, she began trending on Twitter when she wrote, quote, "Whoa, I ate Meat Loaf last night, R.I.P." Now, she would quickly delete the tweet, which many fans perceived to be as insensitive and tasteless. Now, in response to this tweet on Sunday, Shotzy clarified that she legitimately had meatloaf for dinner on Thursday. She issued the following statement via Twitter, quote, "I honestly was not trying to make a joke about Meatloaf's passing. I legitimately made a meatloaf on Thursday while listening to Paradise by the Dashboard Light on repeat, so I was shocked by the coincidence and impulsively posted about it. I took down the post immediately within a few minutes because I quickly realized it was disrespectful and insensitive when in reality I'm actually a huge fan. This has really consumed me and I feel very gross. I'm genuinely sorry to the friends and family that saw that post. I can't stop thinking about how that may have made anyone close to him feel." Now, of course, Meatloaf, made a cameo on WWE television as a guest host of Raw on the May 10, 2010 episode where he would eat an RKO from Randy Orton. It's one of those things, like as soon as I saw the tweet, and I didn't actually see the tweet itself, I saw like many people, the screenshot of it when it was posted around on social media, and I just kind of thought, why would you post that? And I think that was the general reaction of, it's bad timing, and it was just a bit insensitive, and I really don't think there was any kind of malice behind it at all. I don't think she was trying to do it to be funny or be edgy or anything like that. I do legitimately think it was a genuine mistake. I just think, just stuff like that, just think. That would be my response. Just think before you tweet. Think like, is this okay? How would people react to this? There's timing. Read the room. Even though it's not an actual room, read the metaphorical room, I suppose, would be the response to that, right? Again, certainly isn't enough to be cancelled or say she should be fired or anything like that. And I'm sure people got very angry, but it's just read the room. But I think it was a genuine mistake, so it's not worth talking about that much. Some Money in the Bank news, and I know you'll be saying, Owen, but it's only January. Money in the Bank's meant to be in July. What's going on? Well, A new report from Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp indicates that WWE may be moving this year's Money in the Bank event. This is due to UFC being in Las Vegas on the same Saturday, July 2nd. It was noted how UFC will be using the T-Mobile Arena for their pay-per-view show that Saturday, July 2nd. At the same time, WWE was scheduled to run Money in the Bank from Allegiant Stadium in the same city. Though they aren't at the exact same venue, the proximity would cause issues with logistics and for fans who want to attend both events. However, WWE has also booked the Allegiant Stadium for Sunday, July 3rd, so it's possible the premium live event is moved one day over to Sunday, July 3rd, or will be sorted out by the time tickets go on sale later this year. So obviously this will be the first time that Money in the Bank is actually going to be a stadium show. It was announced during SummerSlam weekend last year that Allegiant Stadium, which hosted SummerSlam, was also going to be hosting Money in the Bank. And even that show, of course, the SummerSlam Saturday in Vegas had a boxing fight, a Manny Pacquiao fight going on at the same time too. So they'll want to avoid it, or at least trying to make adjustments for fans that want to attend both events. If anything, you could look at it as WWE could really use this as a positive. I think they realize actually if we get slightly out of the way of UFC, there's going to be even more people in town for the event. I mean, Vegas is a destination city anyway. That's why they like to do big shows there. But if you could move it to a Sunday, you could say, well, people are going to be in town for the UFC show anyway. So we'd be possibly piggybacking that and possibly even getting more people at the show. So it makes sense for them to move it, even though you could argue that, and even WWE try and do this, they're different audiences, but they're really not. They're really not. So I suspect it'll probably be moved, to be honest with you. Finally, a little nice note to end on here today. Edge posted a nice post on social media and that he attended the Big Time Wrestling event in South Carolina this weekend, headlined by a match between FTR and WWE Hall of Famers The Rock and Roll Express. Now, FTR ended up emerging victorious in the match, but then addressed the crowd, praising Morton and Gibson for the impact they've made on tag team wrestling. This is what Edge had to say, and you can see the tweet on the screen right there. Quote, made a little road trip to see this one and catch up with some old friends. It's been revealed various times in the past that Edge is real life friends with AEW stars FTR. They live also quite close to one another in North Carolina. They actually made a reference to it on SmackDown, didn't they? When Seth Rollins did the whole home invasion angle of Edge, with Edge on the phone, talked to Beth Phoenix saying, go see. FTI mentioned their real names at the time. Now, the main event, of course, is one of the few remaining dates on the farewell tour of the Rock and Roll Express. Morton had announced earlier this year that his intention going forward is to team with his son, Kerry. So it's always fun, isn't it? And it's just fun to see the respect that Edge has and looking out for FTR. And you just know for a fact with this run that Edge is having right now, he'd have loved to be in the ring with FTR. And you never know what can happen in the future. But anyway, guys, as always, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news. I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Peace.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.